basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience.
The Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast, brought to you by Prizepicks and the Gametime.
Bob Ryan, Jeff Goodman, Gary Tanguay. As we all know, Jeff Goodman, we're not going to see him till after the Nets are cut down for the final time of the NCAA tournament. Brought to you by Prizepicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prizepicks. Okay, Bob, let's start it off here. Celtics have won 7 in a row, and they seem to be clicking at the right time, even though, of course, we do want to make sure everybody stays healthy.
It's deeper than that, even, Gary. If you go back to 29th of January, the end of January, they were 33-15. And we were having a little bit of kvetching about the lead blowing. And I was concerned. Yeah. I'm tired of it. I got tired of it. And I remember haranguing them about things, getting back on defense and all that. And since that point, starting with the beginning of February, they are 21-4. And they have won 11 of their last 12. And during that stretch, in their victories, the average and now they're on a West Coast trip of 6 games. They've completed 4 of them. And in the 4 games on the trip, they have won 4 games by an average of 20 points a game. 22, 13, 18, and last night's 30. And, this is, there's, things because it's kind of been taken for granted or what? I mean, let's give them some credit. Let's give them some props here. They are playing very well. And now with Tatum hurt, like last night, it didn't seem to matter. Now Suns didn't have Bradley Beal, but Celtics didn't have Tatum. And one reason in the recent times that they're playing so well, he is reminding us, Kristaps Porzingis, of how valuable and useful he can be.
Right.
In the last 4 games, his last 5, he sat out one in the middle. In his last 5, he has scored 24, 25, 27, 16, and 30, during which he is shooting, sit down, folks, fasten your seatbelt, 42 for 62 or 68% from the floor. Now, a lot of it's inside stuff. Great. His 3-point percentage is 10 for 25. So that's almost 40%. That's not bad. He's including 4 for 5 last night. But he's playing very well. And I know they survived the 37 days in the playoffs last year without him. And he came back and had the tremendous first game and a tremendous last game. But they survived without him. But I don't want to think about going into the playoffs without him this year. Believe me, he's really he's a total I'll call him not game changer, situation changer. So let's give him some props. He's really playing very well.
Well, the East is also better this year. I mean, there's some new characters in the mix that you want, specifically Cleveland, that you want him around for. Yeah.
They got the dual big men in Mobley and Allen, no question. I respect them, although they've hit a little snag lately, but a little reality set in for them. That's fine. This is good for them. They need to taste a little adversity. Maybe they were getting a little smug. If I'm one of their fans, I say, okay, they'll get out of this. They'll be okay. You're right. They will need him against him. If they play Indiana, the Knicks, of course, Karl Anthony Towns, definitely, and of course Philly's out of it. Forget them. So but if they play New York, which could happen eventually, he would be very, very much needed. Yeah.
So the Celtics seem to have taken on the characteristic of a veteran team, where now it's time to put the pedal to the metal.
Well, apparently, I mean, you don't really want to think in those terms, but we were free to surmise there's something going on very good. I mean, once again, it's not just this spectacular road trip so far, but they've won 11 of 12 and been very impressive in doing so. And the only game they lost was to OKC, by the way, at home. And this is heartening. It's all making you feel good. If you're a Celtic, now I just stress to people, enjoy it, enjoy the moment, enjoy every game, because when the playoffs come, somebody could step on someone's foot,
Right.
as we know, and it could definitely be different. But I just urge people, the way the culture exists now, it's all about championships and all that, and it just can't be. You can't have a fandom if that's all there is. No, you have to enjoy the moment. You have to remember why you like the sport in the first place, why you're involved in it, why this whole enterprise interests you. And it's, the games and so enjoy it. When they put on a show as they did last night, enjoy it.
Yeah, the OKC game was, I'm looking back on it now, that was just a head scratcher. They were in control of that one. And then, OKC went on a run in the fourth,
Yeah.
and that was it. So, I mean, if they meet in the finals, which they have a distinct possibility, that should be a hell of a series.
Oh, it could be very well there. Oh, you got to take them seriously, of course. And SGA is right now. You got to say best guard in the league at the moment, and they're sure. I give them credit. I give them credit for recognizing what they needed and then went out and doing it, and that is beefing up in the middle and getting Hartenstein. Right. People, he's not a star, he's not an all-star, but he's a load, and he's an important player. And he's something they needed, and he's given them exactly what they needed.
So have you ever seen a Celtic team, or I'll say a team just in general, that can look so great and so unbeatable at sometimes, and then at other times go, what is going on?
Well, part of it's the 3-point. Part of it is the 3-point thing.
Right.
That when they're making them as they were in the beginning of the game last night, nobody beats them. Fine. And then, and that's why you always have to remember you got to have plan B. And they do have options of plan B. A couple of them. One is that they can put the ball in the hands of Tatum and say, and Brown, say, go to the basket. You've got guards that can play, that know how to play. And now you got the 7'3" guy who can play inside or out. And just don't want to forget that he can play inside, not just out. You have to remember that. But they're so in love with the three, and it is, and when they're going well, and they have so many guys that can make it. But I hear last night, I was listening on radio in the second half, and at one point when Horford scored, apparently he was the fifth guy with 100 threes on this team, and this year, I mean, and they go deep. They come off the bench with 2 3-point shooters, and Hauser and Pritchard. And that's their raison d'etre. Both of them.
Right.
And they come off the bench with that. So if your starters are cold, you might get a boost from them. And by the way, Sam Hauser is growing before our eyes as an all-around player. Pritchard, he's already been there, but he's there. But Hauser's getting there too. A very strong asset, a very nice asset to have coming off your bench.
It's funny, and we're going to get to Celtics City in a moment, but when you hear them talking about, well, Bird had 3 threes tonight.
Yeah. Oh, the game is so radically different. I remember, as I said, I'll come up with the numbers, but I looked up some numbers on Larry, and even in 85, 86, which was 7 years into the rule, it did a 3-point shot.
Oh, yeah.
Even then, when Larry had proven, he did have one run, though. I know these numbers are the gospel. You can take them to the bank. But he had a run in the second half of the year when he went 25 for 34 on threes. And even today, nobody's matching. Nobody's doing better than that.
Right.
No
right.
Curry. Nobody is doing better than 25 for 34 over a stretch of games and threes. Larry did that. But I bet we can I will look it up for you before I will have the numbers at my disposal.
That's a tease for next week, Bob.
All right, no, but not. I want to come. I'll let you know what the most threes he ever took in a game next time we meet. How's that?
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm curious to myself to know.
We will continue with Bob Ryan, talk about Celtics City coming up in just a moment, and he has a very Emotional. I don't know. A very interesting experience that he saw in Game 4. Bob's going to talk about that coming up. First, brought to you by Prizepicks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less and at least 2 players for a shot to win up 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. Well, springtime is here and baseball season. Bob Ryan's other favorite sport is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players for the diamond in your Prizepicks lineup, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. Take your pick, more or less, for your shot to win up 1,000 times your cash today, or 1,000 times your cash today. Yes, like you said. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So, what do you think? Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run? How about Glass now? More than 4 hits allowed? What do you think about Ohtani? More than 1 home run? I mean, with Ohtani, you can go both ways, pitching anything, right? I mean, take your pick. All right. So the second half of the basketball season is here. The push for the playoffs is heating up at Prizepicks, the best place to get cash in all your favorite sports. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Okay, Celtics City. This is right in your wheelhouse. Episode 4. I have heard from a lot of friends. They thought it was the best one yet.
Well, they're awful good. It's hard to rate them. I thought this was interesting, of course, because it gets us into Larry and gets us into the first championship, and gets us into Bill Fitch, the interesting saga of Bill Fitch. It gets us, it's terrific, and the whole thing continues to be really, really compelling and really, really, really well done. So, yeah, no question. Very, very enjoyable. Yeah.
So, but let's. There's a lot that you want to discuss here. Let's. Well,
all right.
Let's go. You started off where you want to go first.
Well, they made a big deal, and I really we try. I want to say this as one of the journalists involved, at the time, I wanted to be very careful about the Great White Hope thing. I wanted to be I didn't want to really get involved in that. I wanted to pretend that didn't exist out there, and it did exist, but I didn't want any part of it. Okay, I know that personally, and Larry didn't really want any part of it, but it wasn't fair to Larry. But it was inevitable. It was going to be a storyline. Was the Great White Hope thing with Larry Bird, and they do emphasize in the they maintain their premise as they present this in the doc is that this was very important to the league. Because the league had gone through a phase in the 70s when one of the theories about why it wasn't taking off the way people thought it should was that there were, quote, too many black players.
Right.
And that was out there. There's no question. And Robert Parrish, I won't repeat the word, but I'll say this. He did say something that was accurate, which was that not Robert Parrish. It was Spencer Haywood, excuse me, who, by the way, is a very good interview subject.
Oh, he's terrific in this piece.
Spencer Haywood is one of the breakout stars in terms of his personality in this whole doc, folks. Is Spencer Haywood? He's terrific.
He's great.
And anyway, he refers to the fact that when the Knicks, he didn't specifically state, but this is why he said it. The Knicks became the first team with an all-black roster in the history of the NBA one year. The final roster when the season started had 12 black players. And that was the first time that anybody had ever done that in the NBA in the late 70s. And they were referred to as the N-word Bachers. And he used the word. I won't use it. And it's true. They were. And that's where the league was. And there were a lot of people, and America is America. I mean, frankly. So it was, and you can't deny that the appeal, I made a reference to it on one record in this doc about Cowens and why he was the pivotal person in the attendance upsweep of the Celtics in the early 70s after they just won 11 championships in 13 years and still couldn't sell out regular season games, only the playoffs or when the Lakers showed up.
Right.
Other than that, 7,000 was the norm, 8,000, and they're winning 10, 11 championships. Well, they get a white star and suddenly they're chic. You can't deny it. It happened. Okay? And I can tell you something else, Mikhail. I said this. I did go on record as saying this, so I'm not, I can't walk away from it. That the Garden was, in those days, in the early Mikhail years, the Garden was never more electric than when Kevin McHale blocked that Dr. J shot, because that was a part of the white versus black thing in people's minds. It did exist. But I'm saying it made me creepy. I didn't want to get involved in it. But
Yeah,
Larry,
it's sad.
they got Larry talking about it a little bit. How'd you like Larry's revelation? And all the time I talked to Larry, I don't remember him exactly telling me this, specifically about who exactly he was playing against. Larry, for people who don't know, in French Lick, Indiana, is a resort that goes back over 100 years.
Right.
It's a resort, and swimming pool, golf course, spa, the thing. It's a place to go. In fact, famously, Al Capone went there. That's another story in Larry Bird's father's life. Okay. Anyway. So, Larry was talking about how the workers happened to be black, and they used to play basketball in their spare time. And he made him sure he got himself involved in these pickup games. He said, and they happened to be black. And he said the point for him was they were better players than him, and he wanted to go help improve his game by playing against these better players. In parentheses, who just happened to be black, in close parentheses. He wanted to downplay that's who they were, that they were these
right.
and these bellmen and these people, cooks, chefs,
right.
Where waiters happened to be black. But the fact is that he made a big point to go play basketball with them because they were better than him, and they happened to be black. And he said they treated him well. He said he was ingratiated into their community, and Larry was always colorblind. The Larry that I got to meet, the Larry that I knew and know, was always colorblind. And God knows the person he looks up most on this earth is Quinn Buckner. And so Larry's going to have no trouble fitting into the NBA as the great white hope, because he wasn't going to carry him. He was just going to walk and ignore it and with the team. And I'm sure he did. But it was out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate but you're right. That's a tough cross to bear. I mean, Larry Bird would just say, "Look, I just want to play basketball."
But they made a big deal about that. Okay, all right. So that's number one. Number two, 81, the 81 series. They lost to Philly and 80, and they were just not big enough. And then, of course, we all know one of the two most momentous draft days in the history of the Celtics. The first still has to be Bill Russell. I'm sorry, but this was an incredible day of draft day in 1980. And I know they got me in there saying it, and I did. I was petrified with the first pick they were going to take, Joe Barry Carroll.
Right.
Who I wanted no part of, having seen him up close and personal.
You made that abundantly clear.
I wanted no part of Joe Barry Carroll. And so when they walked away that day with Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale for the first and 13th pick in the draft, 13th pick, by the way, turned out to be Ricky Brown. People don't remember Ricky Brown. Okay. Now, I got to tell you something. Puffing myself up here a little bit, it just so happened. More than once, at least once, I think more than once, when I would have a morning coffee or breakfast with Fitch on the road, which I would quite often, okay? And he once said, and I can hear this in my head, "I'd love to get my hands on that Robert Parrish," unquote. This is like out of nowhere, just talking about the NBA and stuff. And maybe it was after they had just played the Warriors or whatever. I don't know. He said it, which always led me to believe it was him, not Red. It was he put that bug in Red's ear. I want to get that guy. We should get that guy. Right. I don't know to what extent Red, stop this. I don't know to what extent Red personally endorsed or knew or had a feel for Robert Parrish. I don't know. We'll never know. He'll get the credit always, But I'm telling you that I know that Bill Fitch wanted that guy and identified him. And we know what he told me too? He could run up and down. He wasn't being exploited properly. Al Alice wasn't using him right. That's what he was telling me. And I tell you this personally, in I think it was 86, Dave Gavitt was the coach of, I think it was the Pan Am team. Okay. They trained in Rhode Island. I think it was a community CCRI, community college in Rhode Island. And I went down to see them. And I didn't know anything about it. I knew this guy from Centenary, Robert Parrish, 7-footer. And I watched him play and watched him run up and down the floor at 7 foot like a sprinter, and graceful as all hell. Just, he just floated down the floor at 7 feet. I said, wow, And let's think about how many times Robert Parrish was at the receiving end of one of Bird's passes.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I remember one night he just ran Artis Gilmore into Chelsea. I mean, he just ran him. Oh my God, all night long. Anyway, I'm just saying. So that momentous draft day, and next thing you know, they're in the finals and they went in 81. But they did properly identify the Philadelphia series and the Philadelphia rivalry. They hit upon the fact that rivalry is still as important in the history of this team as the Laker rivalry, historically.
Right.
And it was never more pointed, even with Wilton Russell. It wasn't any better than it was with in the early 80s when they each were winning 60 games. And, it was in that 81, when they're down 3-1, the one thing I wish they had made out, not only are they down 3-1, Garrett, but they're down by 6 with 1:40 to go in game 5.
Right.
And they pull it out and win the last 3 games to win the last by 2-1. How's that for living on the edge? But they did it. And they did get the great play by McHale, the block on Andrew Toney, got the block on Andrew Toney in game 6 and he retrieved it himself too, that saved that game. And then, of course, game 7, they got Larry on the bank shot, which to this day he'll never be able to explain why he banked it, because that wasn't what he did. He wasn't a banker. But for some reason, the most important shot he was to take at that point in his career, he just came down and casually banked it from 18 feet. And he wasn't a banker. The one thing he did stress in this, though, was he wanted the ball.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted the ball. I'm the one, he said. I love the little, sometimes the bravado, he's not that way, but he knows who he is. He said, I'm the one that spent 1,000 hours taking all those shots, not the other guys.
Right.
That's why I should have taken the shot. Well, damn it, if he didn't take it and make it.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah.
he says this. It's great to hear him say that.
Well, he thinks it, and he's always been a man of few words. But,
yeah.
I mean, he's extremely confident. I do want to continue on Fitch and what happened in 83 coming up.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to tell you about Gametime. Gametime, the app's great. Just go on. I got the app on my phone. Get the GL and the white background, and you can get tickets to wherever you want. You can also customize your app so you have Gametime picks. It makes you getting tickets easier to see your favorite teams play live. They filter out all the fluff, so you only get incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, they have the super deal, which is the best deal at that particular moment on the app. So check it out. Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Yep, not just sports, but you can also see great shows like at the Wilbur in Boston or the Schubert, or you can go see the Celtics and the Bruins at the Garden, or if you're traveling, you can just click it over to New York and see what's happening at Madison Square Garden. Also, all-in pricing. You see all the numbers up front. No surprises at checkout. Seat views, so you know what you're getting when you buy the seat. You see the panoramic view from your seat, so you know what you're getting. And also, Gametime is the lowest price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Gametime app today. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, Bob, let's there was also a lot of things I learned about 1983 where, Fitch, the headline was the Celtics, they were burned out. But I left watching this very disappointed in that team because you've talked about it. I mean, they just flat out quit. And they've gotten a free pass for that. In
the doc, I guess it's Robert particularly stressed that they blew an opportunity. That team, but here's what I remember this. I've been saying, Gary, for 40 years now, and it was nice to have it vindicated by right out of the horse's mouth that everybody quit on Fitch that mattered other than Larry.
Right.
He wore them out finally. Now you back up to when they introduced Bill Fitch as the coach, and they introduced him as the ex-Marine, and Fitch is talking about the discipline stuff and all that. And okay, so we all lived through that, and I can. There's so many things about Bill Fitch that we can get some other day, everything about him, but he wore out people. Robert talked about how after one game they had done, and all he did was go down what everybody did wrong when they thought that he should be coming in and talking them how wonderful they were, and he went down, annotated every player, everything he did wrong. Bill, here's the thing: Larry didn't care.
Right.
Larry Bird, folks, respected and authority. And he wanted to be coached. And Larry Bird happens to like authority. He likes military. He likes policemen. He's had friends in the police forces, places. He respects authority. He had no trouble. Then again, he's Larry Bird. He wasn't going to get yelled at as much as anybody else, but he did get yelled at apparently by Bill. Still, he wore them out. And here's the thing about Bill Fitch. Yes, he could be a great coach, but he only had one plan as A. He didn't have plan B. I think a coach has to be able to shift gears at times. And I know a lot of coaches Red treated them all differently. Red didn't. It wasn't a Lombardi one way, my way, or the highway. Bill Fitch was pretty much a Lombardi type of one my way or the highway. Okay, he wore out Ernie D in a short period of time. He didn't want to come back here. He wore out Pete Maravich. He quit rather than come back and play for Bill Fitch. That's what happened here, folks. I was looking forward to seeing Pete Maravich for a full year. No, he quit. He wasn't going to play for Bill Fitch. Bill Fitch was hard on him from the minute he came. And Pete didn't like it. So, yeah, 83, that was the story. But Larry didn't quit. But here's the other part that they didn't mention. Larry was sick, missed the game. Okay? And I remember Danny had a great game that game in the first half, and then he petered out. But they weren't. And that set the tone, and they never recovered. But the Bucks were good, and the Bucks were the great B students of the 80s. They weren't as good as the Celtics or the 76ers, but I always said about the Bucks, that team, Marcus Johnson and Sidney Moncrief and Sigma and Junior Bridgman, etc. They drank their milk to the bottom of the glass. They looked both ways before crossing. They studied their ass off, and they got a B. They weren't. That's who they were. But that year, B was good enough to beat that Celtic team.
Right.
After Game 4, I'm in the locker room, and Jim Fitzgerald, the owner of the Bucks, and I don't know if we had any repartee. I don't remember that. I knew him casually, but he seeks me out and says, "Okay, are we the better team now? Say we're the better team." I said, "Jim, yeah, you just swept them. Yeah, you swept them. Yeah, I have to say you're the better team." But he was determined to hear me sell him that the Celtics were the better team.
But they really weren't.
No, but I wasn't telling.
But at that point in time, right.
But I'm just telling you, was a funny
It's so weird, though, Bob, because you know how it is with history. The stories get bigger, they get grander.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah. One of the things that I've enjoyed about this series is at times I'll be tough on Jaylen Brown or Tatum, and then they'll show a game where like Bird didn't shoot well, and you're like, wait a minute, Bird had a bad game? What? Larry had a bad shooting game? We romanticize the past so much.
Sure.
That 83 team, that really bugged me. That they disappointed me as a fan. They let me down because they didn't like the coach.
They disappointed themselves, as it turns out.
Totally.
If they had to do it all over again, the rest of them, and not Larry once again, but
right.
But it did. But there was one other technical thing. They needed, and they just to combat Philly, they needed an Andrew Toney deterrent.
Right.
And who was it? The Robert that talked about how great he was. Andrew Toney, in my belief, and I've said this and I'll say this is the 1,001st time, is the greatest forgotten player in NBA history.
I agree.
The best player that people don't remember, and his career ended quickly because of bad feet. He broke in this, broke in that. That he was an assassin. He was absolutely a great. And if you did a scouting report of this guy, oh my God, what you say, we got a 6'3" guard who's got an NBA body, requisite quickness, can shoot covered as well as any play, get his own shot, go to the basket, ambidextrous, don't foul him, like a 90%er. And I said he was the most contemptuous player I've ever seen. He like laughed at double teams, laughed at him,
Yep.
Oh my God, was he good? But there was a period of him, we didn't see him behind closed doors, okay? Billy Cunningham he seemed to, for some reason, exasperate Billy at times. But boy, was he good. But the career we didn't get a chance to, he's not in the Hall of Fame because he didn't have the career like 5 years, but boy, was he good. Oh my God.
We are going to talk more about the Celtics City series coming up in our podcast again in just a few days. So that podcast will be dedicated entirely to the topic. All right, let's move on, Bob. Some other NBA stuff. The Clippers now have turned some heads.
The Clippers are playing well. As we speak, the Clippers are on a run that is 9 of 11. And during that time, Harden has played well, but the guy who's gotten healthy and reminding the world of what he can be and who he is, but he misses so much that you forget, and that is Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
Listen up, folks. Kawhi Leonard's last 6 games, 25, 23, 33, 25, and 27, during which, sorry, folks, he has shot 10 for 18, 10 for 20, 9 for 12, 12 for 19, 9 for 16, and 11 for 21, which is 61 for 96, 63% from the floor. And you can imagine that 90% of those shots are distant shots. He's playing great. And he's reminding you of his true greatness. So they intend to be. I'll put it this way: they intend to be heard from. We know they're well coached with Ty Lue.
Right.
They have an underrated big man in Zubac. He's not. He gives you what you need. He gives you what you need, and at that. So yeah, and it's interesting now because we've got 2 stories circulating in L.A., which is good for the league, good for the world. They could theoretically have a confrontation before they get either one gets to the finals, and that could be a lot of fun. And for this year, it wouldn't be in the same building. Somebody would be a road team, a true road team, have to go across town.
What do they call that? A freeway series?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be far from downtown to the Inglewood of the new building. But yeah, that would be fun. In rush hour, it'd be a lot of traffic, but they'll get there. But anyway, no, they're going to be heard. They intend to be heard from. Now, this presupposes that Kawhi Leonard can manage to stay healthy for more than a month, and we'll see about that.
Now, you're here to defend LeBron James.
Well, yes,
and so am I.
There's an active LeBron hate club out there, and part of it is, I understand, and someday we can talk about the whole GOAT thing. I love talking about the GOAT thing, but part of it is that the ongoing GOAT thing about him and Michael, and they are the 2 guys that should be discussed in that regard.
Sure.
Below center. Don't get me started. I'll have to explain the whole thing.
That's right. We got it.
Put the centers on the side. We're talking about below center players, all around players, who's the greatest GOAT and all that. Okay, so the Michael adherents are looking for ways. They just can't praise Michael. They got to go knock LeBron. It's much more than the other way around, because there's not much you can not say bad about Michael as a player that I can think of. I can tell you that. Well, he had to learn how to share. I'll give you that. But once he did, oh boy. Anyway, yeah, boy, it's active out there, and they're finding all ways that blaming. They're coming up with these stats about who Michael's teammates were, as opposed to who's LeBron teammates were to winning the championships. And Michael, of course, never lost the finals.
Right.
It was 6-0 in the finals, right, and never had a 7th game in the finals. There's LeBron haters out there, but he's not perfect, and a lot of it they're talking about, oh my God, so he now has come up with a statement that's got them all on Twitter that Giannis would score 250 points in a game 20 years ago. That's silly. But, anyway, I'm just saying, as a basketball player, I'm sorry, he's pretty much above reproach as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think just as an observer, why I give Jordan the edge over LeBron is I just think Jordan had it. I think it comes down to his roots. I think he had it tougher growing up. LeBron was coddled as a can't miss top prospect from day one. I kind of compare it to Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. LeBron in high school, everybody knew he was going to be a star. Jordan got cut in high school.
Yeah.
Jordan had a chip on his shoulder.
Right.
Jordan came out with something to prove. LeBron was anointed at a very young age. And the same thing with Manning versus Brady. So I think with Jordan and with Brady, there was an edge to him. They were disrespected and they never forgot it. And while he's an all-time great, I don't think he had that edge that Jordan did. And I will say this. If I had a choice to have dinner with one or the other, I would pick LeBron.
Well, you make it that they each got their way the top of their respective mountains, right, in a different path. You're right. Michael Jordan was not that well known outside of North Carolina,
right,
as a high school player. He didn't have a national notoriety at all. But he showed the world who he was as a rookie. But even right up to as a freshman, when he makes the game-winning basket in the 82 championship game, a lot of people still around across the country just knew he was a pretty good freshman player for Carolina, but he wasn't on the way to demigod status yet, Whereas LeBron was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 15 or 16.
Right.
And I made this point. In the history of basketball, most of the guys at the inner sanctum turned out to be better players than people thought. And I'm talking about guys like Michael, number one, LeBron, Larry and Magic. Larry wasn't well known outside of Indiana at all. Magic wasn't known outside of Michigan
right.
at all. It's a different world in terms of publicity possibilities too. But the fact is that the very few people lived up to the complete hype. The number one would be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor.
Right.
Very well, he was in his time. He was known, and LeBron would be another one. And Wilt Chamberlain, another one. He was known in high school at Overbrook High in Philadelphia back in the 50s, as much as any high school player in the 50s was ever known. Another guy, by the way, was Jerry Lucas, who was very well known outside of Ohio when he was growing up in Middletown. Anyway, but not true about Michael. You're right. So you're right. That's part of it. It's part of it. LeBron has lived up to it. He's lived up to it all. And as far as I'm opinion. But anyway, it's an interesting phenomenon.
And he's not a jerk. I mean, that's the thing. He's a nice guy.
He's a good teammate.
Yes.
He's a good teammate. He's been, and I always go back to, if anybody saw that documentary that was done about him when he was at St. Vincent St. Mary and the team, and you're watching the way he interacts with his team. Everybody knew he was the star, but he was happiest to win with those guys, the friends of his that he'd had since like fifth grade. He was just one of the guys who happened to be better than everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still just one of the guys. And he's always been about team as far as I'm concerned. And the way he's going to bring out the best in Luka, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
he's going to make this thing work for them. They're going to be heard from too. And LeBron's going to have a big role in it. And
as we end this segment, Bob, did you see that the game worn Michael Jordan jersey, the first game he ever wore, first jersey he wore in the NBA, was auctioned off for $4.2 million.
I know it's a practice. It was an exhibition game too, right? I think.
Oh, that I didn't even know.
I think but yeah, I mean, I look, when it comes to memorabilia, I just step back and go, okay, I mean, I like little trinkets, but I can't even begin. Who can relate to that? But if anybody, Michael Jordan, okay.
Yeah. Well, when the Boston Celtics are sold for, $6.1
billion.
$6.1 billion, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Bob, coming up in our next segment later in the week, we will be talking exclusively about Celtics City. We got some emails to respond to talking about the Bill Simmons documentary on HBO. We are brought to you by Prizepicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prizepicks.